Hello, hello, and good morning. Welcome back for episode 2 of the Sit Down, Stand Up podcast, where we just tell stories that we hope are not unfunny. And I don't know why I used a royal we just now, but we're going to roll with it because that's what we do here. Nothing is scripted. Nothing is written out beforehand. I do think about things, as most folks do from time to time, but I haven't put anything to paper just yet. That might change if this becomes too meandering. But who am I kidding? Everything I do is tangential. Everything we talk about is tangential. But first, I'm going to anchor myself to the last episode. For those you don't know, we're trying to do an intro last time, and the gist of the intro was to be talking about the previous attempts to do stand-up comedy, and we didn't get very far. But we did make some progress. If you want to check out episode 1, that'll kind of get you up to speed. But we kind of left on I wouldn't call it a cliffhanger, just an incomplete thought. And one that I kind of took on a weird segue. So at the very end, I was talking about not getting heckled. So to set the stage, I was performing my first attempt at stand-up. I was working. It was through an event that our sketch comedy group, who had been promoted to essentially being in charge of getting anything and everything related to entertainment onto campus. That doesn't mean we could get everything and anything. We didn't have the budget for that, but it was just that was our functionality. There was a group called the Campus Activity Board, or CAB, that existed before us, and it was their kind of their job, their purview to bring in stand up or bands or speakers or somebody. Like they were there. Okay, anything that happens that could be classified as entertainment, that's what they were in charge of doing, that, and they were given a budget for it. But it was admittedly run by some theater folks, friends of mine, some of them, and it was a little more tailored to a theatre group, if you will. Like, theater can be spelled two different ways. It's Theatre, which is like the classic spelling, and then Theater. I don't know if one's classic or not. I just know one is RE, the other one is ER. And theater to me is like the functional folks. It's like people who like want to get jobs doing it, and they enjoy what they do, but they look at it as kind of like a career. Whereas theatre, which is where it ends with an RE, are those who make it a lifestyle. They are very dramatic, and they're in it more so as a kind of an outlet to be dramatic and offbeat and off kilter, and they pursue intentionally things that are just very outside of the norm of the norm, really. So that to say, there was a mix. I would say there's a little more theatre than theater in the group. And so a lot of the things that were being booked were more geared towards theatre people, which is fine, but most folks aren't theatre. So anyway, after the stand-up happened, not the stand-up, I'm sorry, the sketch comedy that we did, and it went really well. I think it was after either the first or second one, the university was like, hey, can you guys kind of take this over and so you're part of campus entertainment now, and now here's a budget for you to bring in other acts and everything. So that's where we're at. And one of the first things we did was an open mic night, because it's cheap, it's local talent, it's the people, well, not local, it wasn't like we were pulling from outside the campus. It was pretty much campus centered talent, really. Whatever you want to do, magic tricks. It was just gave you a platform. Karaoke wasn't involved, but everything else was on the table. So we had some musicians, some guitar acts. We were in Virginia. Dave Matthews was big back then. He was from UVA, so Virginia's son. Like everybody was into it. I was not into Dave. I didn't dislike the guy. I didn't really know much about him. I didn't hear his music organically. It was just all my friends were like, "Oh my gosh, Dave Matthews is so amazing," and his band, the Dave Matthews Band. And I mean, I liked the music well enough. I couldn't dig on the lyrics. I didn't get them. They didn't make much sense to me. Kind of, sort of. Some of them did, but not really. And the fluctuation coming down and up, and now I usually have a fantastically horrible singing voice. That's me crooning at 7:00 in the morning, which, yeah, that kind of sucks. I actually said I was going to be doing this earlier. I want to do this earlier. I need to be getting this done like at 5:00 in the morning. But I actually had some things I had to address, and in the morning, I had to shave. Because it was getting long enough where the hair was kind of hanging over the upper lip, and I just ugh. Like if you're gonna have a beard, if I'm gonna have a beard, I got to trim it. It cannot be. I cannot have bristles hanging down over my lip. So every time I close my mouth, like I feel them poking my bottom lip is disgusting. Anyway, so I'm not going to spend hours manicuring my facial hair, and it grows in spotty anyway, so you wouldn't see the results. So I just had to give myself an artificial. I actually use clippers, so I haven't got a haircut in 25 years, pretty much. Right after college, I bought a pair of clippers and I cut my own hair, because when you have kind of curly whatever hair, it doesn't do what you want it to do anyway, ever. So the one good thing about that is nobody knows when you're having a good hair day or a bad hair day. They can tell if you like spent any time on it at all. Like the first episode was just kind of rolled out of bed, which I had to get dressed up. Now I'm going to put on my finest t-shirt a little later on today. I've got a meeting. So that's why I went ahead and got myself all dolled up here. But usually I'm just going to be rolling out of bed, because who cares, right? But anyway, yeah, I hadn't actually gone to a barber. It's just so tedious. You got to wait. You're sitting down waiting, and then you sit down and have somebody else do it. And look, I understand if you have a style, if you're professional, if you have the straight hair where you just end up with bed hair if you don't do something with it. Like, I get it. There are many reasons to do it. But for me, it was a cost-saving measure. A good pair of clippers will run you like $60 or $70. And that's a really good one. That's a really, not the best, but a really good one. And it usually, I think my first one lasted for like 10 or 15 years. So yeah, you can't tell. I mean, I could never really take it when I tell people that, I don't get surprise, which I guess is good and bad. They're like, yeah, it's obvious you cut your own hair. Like, we don't want to say anything. We're your friends, but yeah, we get it. It's not a well-kept secret. It's very clear you're cutting your own hair. Or they just actually, no, there's no good way to look at it. That's pretty much it. They don't seem surprised. I just realized that I have horrible friends. Well, not horrible friends. I have honest friends, but not like really helpfully honest. I don't know. Who cares? Who cares, really? It's vanity. It's all vanity. Why was I talking about haircut? I was talking about stand-up. Clippers. Bathroom. Well, anyway, back to the original story. We were supposed to bring in talent. We were doing open mic night. Oh, Dave Matthews. Because all I mentioned was that we were having a guitar, we had some people come up, singing and playing guitar. Dave Matthews was popular back then. I didn't get it. The lyrics, puberty, my voice sounds crazy. Or no, I usually sound great. I actually don't. It's morning. It's not early, but here's why. Okay, all of that. I did that. That was for you, not for me. That was to let you know how we got here. And then going, okay, now I'm walking it back to the mains. I told you, tangential. That's how this rolls. It's a little chaotic. Hopefully you can keep up. I'm going to try to slow it down a little bit. Actually, that's not true. I don't know if I'm going to do that or not. I would like to try to slow it down, but this isn't like real stand-up where like you're waiting for a laugh or you're pausing for a laugh. I don't even know where that would be. But anyway, so that is the stage, open mic. And because I was a part of the group, I was able to request a slot. And as I was saying yesterday, mortified to think back that it might have been a 15-minute slot, but I don't think it was, because I memorized everything. I memorized the whole act, which, I mean, stand-up works in different ways. Sometimes people just wing it. Sometimes they have like notes, or they have punchlines, or however they write their notes. I script it out completely so that I don't forget anything. I told you, well, one side of my brain is must stick to the agenda, must be very proper and such and so on. And then there's the other side that is actually providing the material, and that's all over the place. I don't know what I got. Well, let's see if I have some stuff here to go on, but can we do this? No, we must stick to the schedule. Well, I don't have that paper anymore. It got lost just moments ago. So here's what I do have, and there's a constant war going on there. So if I have it memorized, the scatterbrain part of me that doesn't really have its stuff together, it's almost like muscle memory. It's organ memory. There's something in the brain where it's like, okay, it's autopilot. And now that didn't work. It works when I'm doing like if it is adherence to it, like if I'm thinking of it as entertainment, if I'm thinking about it as I was gonna say product, but like as a production, there we go. As a production, if I think about it like a production. Oh, I forgot. My Mighty Mug is here with me as well. If you do want to sponsor anything, these shenanigans, I don't know why you would, but you can get like 10 seconds of advertisement. I can plaster something on my Mighty Mug here. So the few times that I bring it up to my lips, like so, you get incredible notoriety. Anyway. Oh, gosh. Right. So, I don't know why I said right. So I didn't have my thoughts together. Right. Well, okay. Well, I talked about that. So I had it memorized at this particular time. I had it memorized. So the fact that I was kind of scatterbrained, it didn't matter. I had memorized it to the point where I could just do it off the cuff. So that's something I had going for me. But I don't think I did that for a 15-minute set. I think I only could do that for 10. So maybe we'll split the difference. Officially, we will say a 12-minute set, which is still like 8 minutes too long, 8 or 9 minutes too long. Especially my first time going up there, it was suicide, and nobody warned me. It was my own fault. Whatever. And there's times in life where, a lot of times in life, it's kind of a disappointment. It's good and bad, where you do something, whether it's a drawing or whether it's a performance, or you make a movie or a short, a sketch or something. Anything you do that's kind of a creative thing, you do it, and you usually have this like nice honeymoon period where you really think it's the cat's pajamas and you think it's amazing, and you want to share it to all your friends and everything. And then, depending on your maturity, your growth, and how actually good it is, that honeymoon period kind of wanes. And the more you look back on it, the more you see the flaws, where you could do better. And it gradually becomes something that you're no longer like thrilled about. You're like, it was a learning experience. It goes from being the pinnacle of your craft, the pinnacle of your existence, to a learning experience, which is a nice way of saying, it's a more articulate way of saying that, I should say. So you have these times where, and you can think that something is really, really good, and then you go watch it, or you look at it 5 or 10 years later, so you haven't looked at it in a while, and you go back and revisit it, and you go, ooh, oh man, that wasn't quite what I remembered. Bless my heart. I tried so hard back then. I mean, it was the best I could do. You have those kind of situations. So imagine how horrible it would be in my situation to know that even in my memory, I know it was horrible. I don't have a fond memory of it. I haven't seen, there was a tape, so I did review it. I don't think I watched the whole thing. I don't think I could, even back then, even in my honeymoon state. It didn't last very long, by the way. The honeymoon was maybe like 48 hours. And then I saw the tape and I was like, oh gosh, oh no. Because there was no recorded laughter. I think the mic just didn't pick it up. I think that's what it was. Those old VHS, like the camcorders, when they actually had tapes that you would load in, they weren't digital or anything. This is back in 1999, 2000, turn of the century, really. Turn of the century tech. We weren't even at flip phones. For those of you very, very young, that's how old this was. That's how far back this goes. We did not have flip phones. Cell phones were just becoming less ridiculous. My first cell phone was an Altel piece of garbage. It was about this big, long, skinny thing. No, like a basic, like it looked like a tiny Game Boy screen. Like it was like this big, greenish, like that pea soup color. And you just, I don't even think it could text. I think it was literally just a call, and it had a little antenna you pulled out. Crazy stuff back then. But so we didn't have really great recording stuff. It wasn't prevalent. There were some people that had the high end thing, but those were the giant cameras, not the film ones with the film canisters on top, the Mickey Mouse look there. But the really nice professional grade things. They were big. They looked really impressive. Somebody was up there with like one of the little handy cams, that was just, it was prosumer type thing. So I all of that to say, I'm pretty sure the audio wasn't as good as it could have been. So you could hear me okay, but you couldn't hear the laughter that I knew. I was absolutely certain it had to be there. I don't remember, honest to goodness, I don't remember when I was doing it. I don't remember feeling embarrassed, which is that the Dunning-Kruger thing where it's kind of that where you don't know what you don't know, or no, you know just enough, or you know enough to feel like you really know something, but you actually don't know it a lot. I think that's, ironically, I might be displaying Dunning-Kruger effect of the Dunning-Kruger effect. I don't know the definition quite well enough. I've heard of it, but I don't know it. That's a perfect example. I know the name and I know the general principle, but I don't know it well enough to actually speak really authoritatively. So I'm actually underwhelming, undereducated with it. Anyway, it's the idea that you just don't know. You don't know how much you don't know, kind of a thing, if I recall correctly. So I think at that time I found myself to be funny, and so I was not ashamed of what was going on. I don't think it registered that, because I don't remember that feeling of shame, like not getting laughs. Like right now I'm acutely aware. When I did my second stand-up was in New Jersey. When I did that, I was acutely aware that I was bombing. I think I was bombing badly, but in college, but I didn't realize it because I'm not, two factors, I think. First of all, I came from theater. And theater is not stand-up. Like you're not like, there are laughs, like especially Moliere, Shakespeare. Okay. I just listed two names that were not like necessarily known. Well, Moliere, I think, is known for comedy. Shakespeare, not so much, but he has funny stuff in there. My point is, you can do, especially when if you got creative directors and everything, you can do Shakespeare in a way, certain, thing where it punches up certain lines, where something that was meant to be funny back then, if you can do it right, people can get the idea of why it's funny now, even though they may not understand exactly what's being said because it is flowery and kind of roundabout. So you can get laughs. We in fact, Midsummer Night's Dream. I mean, and that is a comedy. Comedy just means it doesn't end in tragedy. It's not, it doesn't die. That's what a classic comedy was considered. It was like, hey, you're not going to walk out, hating life or, feeling crappy about yourself. But there were places in there where it was just naturally prone to comedy. But my point being, in the entire runtime, the laughs were probably 20%, maybe 20 to 25% of the show. Maybe it was a little bit more for Midsummer, but plays in general, stage productions in general aren't, unless they're like a modern comedy, they're not built to be wall to wall laughs. And because you have to have story in there, So I'm used to performing and not necessarily getting a laugh at every moment. It's like maybe they're thinking about the true truth about what I'm saying. Maybe they're reflecting on their own lives, or maybe this is just, it's okay. I'm building to something greater. But I didn't know how to package a joke. I thought it was just literally talking, kind of admittedly what I'm doing now, but I know that it's not necessarily hilarious. That's why I said the goal is to tell stories and to relate to things about life that are not unfunny. So politics and things of that nature. I know there are political comedians out there, and they find ways to make anything funny or present it that way. But it does get kind of taxing after a while. Like, and I don't, even if it's I agree with their politics, or they're really good about it and they don't really try to say one way or the other. They just talk about it in general. Even then, it just wears on you. So I would rather steer clear of that myself. And especially when doing things like this where I don't have a punchline. So it's like you'd be getting just like political gobbledygook, and that's, who wants that? All right, gosh, where did I end up with the guy going through the papers? Like, well, okay, where are we now? Well, there are no papers actually in this case, so that's kind of what makes it great. Oh, talking about no shame. So there were reasons why I did not have shame up there, and that was one of them. Is I was used to performing where you weren't necessarily always getting laughs. And in my mind, anytime I wasn't getting a laugh, it was a setup. Even if it should have been funny, or it should have been better paced, there should have been something in there to make it funny, it wasn't. And I think there was a second reason I didn't know. I just, my memory isn't there. Oh, because I don't think the concept of bombing was a thing, because we did have the success with the sketch comedy show. And I did have some, I mean, again, Dunning-Kruger had a little bit of success, a little bit of good times on stage that I thought I could do no wrong. Like you can't miss up. All you got to do is get up on stage and be relaxed and be energetic, and it's going to work out. It'll be fine. That's not the truth. But I didn't know that at the time. I didn't know enough to be like, I could bomb horribly here. And I have the feeling, I'm not 100% sure on this, but I think, it's a college campus. The bar is a little bit lower. You're not expected to be professional. You're not expected. And it's an open mic. And that might have been the saving grace. You see, it was very avant-garde. So for those of you who didn't see the first episode, my setup, I had just finished watching. I was really into Man on the Moon. Not the whole movie. I liked Jim Carrey's portrayal of the Tony Clifton character that Andy Kaufman did. I've only vaguely seen the actual character, and I don't remember much about it at all, but the Hollywood version of it, the Jim Carrey version of it, I thought was hilarious. He's kind of a lounge singer. He's up there, he's abrasive, he's a jerk. He does make off-color jokes, but they're also kind of lame and kind of whatever. And he sings, and he does all this. And it's just, the voice and the crassness, everything, for whatever reason, it hit me. I don't know if I think it's funny now, But I really liked the character. I liked everything about it. So I had it in my head that I was going to do like a dual personality thing, like a schizo thing. I mean, it wasn't supposed to be schizo, but it was like Jekyll and Hyde. Like I was going to talk just like this and try and do stand up from my perspective, of being an introvert and all that kind of stuff. And then I would switch. It was kind of like a good comedian, bad comedian. Unfortunately, it was just all bad comedian because it wasn't funny. The thing about like Andy, as much as it was kind of crazy to me, like it was almost like method in terms of if he was Tony Clifton, he was Tony Clifton. He was never going to respond to you as Andy Kaufman. He was never going to break character. So if you're going to commit to the bit. So it was either you were getting Andy, you were getting one of his other characters, you were getting Tony, but that was going to stay the same until he decided his performance is over, he would leave, and he would leave the character behind. Me, not understanding that, decided I was going to flip-flop between the two. So I wasn't committed to the bit. I was the worst kind. It was like halfway, 50-50. That's the worst kind of commitment. Hey man, I'm going to be with you enough to make you really think you can rely on me. I'm going to present myself in this way up here doing stand up for a minute and a half and make you get relaxed, make you think, okay, this guy, he's not funny, but he is a nice guy. And then I'm going to change abruptly. Like, and I think I did it too. Like I had it in my head, like I was going to do like a spin, like literally spin, like a little Wonder Woman spin, whee, and spin. And when I turned back around, I would be this jerk character. But he didn't have a cool voice. As I said before, I know I wasn't doing Tony. I wasn't channeling that. I don't know. I thought maybe I would have like because I like doing accents. They're fun. I'm not great at them necessarily, but they're fun to do. And so I think I had an accent with it. But the only accent I could think that I would do for this character is like a New York-ish, in that vicinity. So I don't know if I actually did that. But it didn't matter. It didn't matter because it was still a horrible idea. But I don't know if I did a turn or I just kind of did like and then came back and did it. Don't know how I did it, but I know there was a transition, something to indicate to the audience I'm no longer that character. Okay, now I'm the jerk comedian. I'm saying jerky things. But even then, I'm not an avant-garde guy. I am not a jerky guy by nature. Like my comedy is not roasting people. Like I might poke fun at something or that I find peculiar or whatever, but I'm not going to make fun of somebody. Even in the realm of comedy, it's I don't think it's bad. I think that comedians can do it very well, and especially if you present yourself in a certain way that people, they're just disarmed by it. They laugh at themselves. They don't really care, and it works great. I have a very severe, very passionate personality, so I have to be very mindful of that I can come on very, very hard, even if I'm just joking. And I get it from my mom all the time. And I know because all the time she'll say something like, son, the pancakes are ready. And I'm like, oh, we're having pancakes? I was just joking. I mean, obviously she wouldn't do that. That'd be cruel. Like who would tell you there's pancakes or not? I just pulled that out of the ether. But she will say something that sounds like it's not provocative, but just sounds like, something that I'm like, I don't know if I really agree with that or what have you. And so then when I push back or say, well, I always thought about it like this. She's like, no, son, I'm joking. Okay. And she really is, but I don't get that. I don't know it until she tells me she's joking. And so I get a lot of that, I think, from her and how I do things where people don't know that I'm joking. In fact, there's a cruel irony in my life where the times where I'm really trying to be, unless I'm livid, if I'm furious, usually there's profanity involved. If I'm furious, people get it. But if I'm trying to be serious about something and talk very seriously about something, and in my mind, it's like, okay, we need to really hit this home. We need to give people the seriousness. When I do that, people think I'm kidding. And sometimes when I'm just being flippant and just making jokes all the time, it happens. I do video game streaming sometimes, and I love the interaction with chat. That's why I do the stream instead of just making videos for it. But they'll say something and they'll just be like, dude, how is this taking you so long? And I'm like, hey, look here, I'm doing just fine. Like this is better than I was doing last time. How dare you? Just like that. And to me, in my mind, that's just goofy. It's over the top. Like, how dare you? Like, who says that? Like, that's a movie thing. That's a TV thing. Nobody says how dare you in real life. That sounds ridiculous. But he was like, "Oh, I'm sorry." And I'm like, "No, dude. No, I'm not mad at you. I'm not coming at you. I'm joking." So I just know, bottom line, I know that I can present a certain way. So I need to, I don't want to say something to somebody in the audience, or not heckled, but especially if you're not getting heckled, why pick on the audience? If they start the fight, that's one thing. Otherwise, just be nice. But that's because I know it may not come across, even if I'm just trying to play around. If they don't know me, which most people wouldn't, then I think it can come off maybe a little biting, and it's just not my cup of tea. Like I said, I'm not a bad guy, or I'm not an abrasive guy. There we go. Let's put it that way. I'm not an abrasive guy, so I'm not going to. I don't do that very well. So my edgy in this stand up that I was doing, my edgy character, I don't know what I was saying, but it couldn't be that edgy because I got most of my edge in my 20s. What little edge you see before you now was gained. I mean, look at me, edge lord. Whatever I have was gained in my 20s. I did not have it at the time. I was just coming out of my home environment where everything was peachy keen. Well, home life wasn't necessarily. There was a lot of stuff, especially in retro. Looking back at it, you go, "Oh, I didn't realize that was going down. That's not cool." But for me, it was a little more. I got to figure out this robe thing. I mean, really, who cares if there's a little. That's just not. It's not an OnlyFans. Is my point. I don't want to be doing OnlyFans, but I want to wear my robe. It's comfortable, and when you're just rolling out of the shower, it dries you off. It's a wonderful thing. Anyway, so yeah, I don't know what I was channeling when it was just a version of like Tony Clifton, but like even less offensive, which kind of ruins the character. I don't know. It was really the complexity of how bad this was. And I had friends around me. Friends don't let friends do bad stand-up. And, I still actually am in contact with a lot of the friends back then. From back then, we still talk now and then. In fact, we try to do a reunion. The sketch comedy thing is still going. Seeing You Tonight, as far as I know, is still going. Even after we left, it's gotten much bigger. It's evolved. I don't even know what they're doing now, but we were the OG. We started it there. But anyway, so that was my first comedy attempt at stand up, and I can't tell you too much about it. I never got heckled. Then that was kind of the point. And what I left off with the last video, and just to wrap that thought up, the last video I was talking about not getting heckled, but that not necessarily being because there was nothing to heckle me over. It's that if your mind is fixed on a certain direction, if you think about something as being just unquestionably true, or if you're thinking this is what comedy is, or this is what I was expecting, the kind of things I was expecting to hear, if you're really set in that way, if somebody says something that is completely outside the realm or the purview of what you were expecting, you have this like stunned silence, or you just don't have anything to say. And my example of that, the way I segued into that without really explaining it, was if somebody, and this happened 4 times. I worked a job. But lucky me, I was only there for like 6 months, and a lot of the people were great, but I had to train some guys, and 4 of them, which was like, I don't know, 25% of the people I trained, were flat earth folks. And there was a bunch of other stuff combined with that I'm not going to get into because it's really not great stuff, but they had their talking points. It was like they all came from a school of thought. I don't know, but it was 4, and they didn't know each other. That was the crazy thing. But they would share openly. Like our first time out on the road, we were driving trucks, so I was training them on the route and everything. And this is in the middle of the night, so there's really not a lot going on. The radio's maybe low key, whatever. We don't have the same taste in music, so neither one of us is really blasting tunes. And so we're having these conversations, and a lot of the conversations are pretty good. They're not bad. But then they just bring up flat Earth and the firmament. My gosh, I heard the word firmament so many times. It's not even a good sounding word. There's some words you don't mind to I don't know, shenanigans. It's a fun word to say. I think it's a fun word to hear in general. I don't mind saying it a lot, or if it comes up a lot, I don't mind. But the firmament, it's a really lame word to hear so much. So I kind of have a little gag reflex in the back of my throat now every time I think about that word. So I'm not going to say it again if I can help it. But I learned more about that from these fellows than I ever cared to know, or I learned their version of it, I guess, more than I cared to know. but flat earth was a thing. And I was unprepared. My mind, my paradigm of how the world, how the universe, well, I was going to say how the world works, how things are, the spherical nature of the world was never in question. So I was speechless. I had nothing to say. So I didn't quote heckle the guys, because now I should have. By the fourth time, I think by the third or fourth guy, I had a little bit of pushback. I'd done a little bit of research on the word that I will not say again. And, so I was able to push back a little bit, or just gave my brain a chance to go, okay, there's a reality in which there's a mentality in which the world is flat. Wrap your head around that. Oh, you can't, because it's flat. But just, think about that and think about why that doesn't make sense. Because it's a natural thing, like breathing. It's like, what do you mean it doesn't make sense? How do you make sense? I don't know. It's confusing. So that was where we ended last time, exactly talking about that. And that was my analogy for why you might not get heckled, or why you don't get, one of the reasons why you might not get heckled has nothing to do with the fact that you're not saying something heckle worthy. It's simply the fact that it doesn't register. And to be fair, I'm skipping ahead here a little bit, but I think we can move on now. I don't know what exactly the content of that first stand-up attempt was. I don't know if there were laughs. I think they trickled in. I think I got just enough to make me think, yeah, I did pretty good. Because I said before, my estimate when I came out, I remember distinctly saying this, was it was a 75. I gave myself a solid C on the performance, which that does show a little bit of self-awareness. So little clap for myself there. 75. Okay. It definitely wasn't a B. I think it was closer to a D. It wasn't a fail because I didn't just completely blank up there. I did perform it the way I wanted to. There was some performative value to it. Oh, that was the other factor. It was an open mic night. So I don't think they said, and here's the comedy stylings of Jesse Gray. Like I don't think they introduced me as a stand-up. I don't even know that we had a host. We had to have a host. That was the whole thing. We were putting it on. We were sponsoring it. We were organizing it. So there had to be somebody introducing each of the acts, but I don't think that I hope not. I don't think they introduced me as a stand-up. I just think they said, and next up is Jesse Gray doing a performance. And so as a performance, I think it wasn't the worst. It was ill-conceived. It was poor content, but I think it was executed very well. Something to be said for execution. And I think that's what, in my mind, made it seem like it was actually not horrible. But I'm fairly certain it really was. But no heckling, a little bit of laughs, a sprinkling of laughter. And maybe that's all I was expecting, or close to what I was expecting. And so it came across okay. But so it wasn't the worst feeling in the world. But again, it was an insular college environment. And but I should never have had that much time. So we'll put that one to rest. The next time I tried stand-up was in New Jersey. I was doing time in New Jersey because I tried to get to New York. Don't ask me why. That's a whole, well, I mean, it's all about stories, but I'm trying to get the intro down just to set the stage for what's to come, and really why I started doing this. So for reasons that I'll probably get into later, I was with a friend, and we were trying to get to New York. We were trying to find an apartment in New York because we wanted to be in New York. We were going to pursue theater and all those wonderful performative arts and things in that cultural hub. Unfortunately, this was before GPS. So back then you had to use the thing called MapQuest. So it was kind of like what Google Maps is, but you had to do it on your computer. Like you couldn't do it on your phone. I don't even know that you had smartphones back then, because this is 2003. So I don't think smartphones were a thing. And if they were, I didn't have one. That was the stylus, the blueberry, the raspberry. Probably important to get that right. That's one. I think it was the blueberry. I don't think they would call a handheld device a raspberry. We all know that's a raspberry. Anyway, it was some kind of berry. Blackberry was probably a blackberry. That sounds pretty cool. Blackberry sounds legit. All right. Well, yeah, I'm not a branding guy. Blackberry. That's what he had. So he had the little stylus and whatever, but it wasn't even a touchscreen. It was a phone that was not devoid of intelligence, but it wasn't a smartphone. So there was really no way to check in real time where you were on there. So what you had to do, or what I would do if I was going someplace I didn't know, especially if there were a lot of turns or I did a lot of highway driving, I would print out MapQuest. It would give you directions. Like you'd give you a general map, and then it would, turn left here, turn right here. Again, like GPS, but without the talking and not live. And so we printed out like 10 different locations. And you probably see where the problem in this lies, right? We printed out 10 locations. Our point of origin was in Southern Virginia. We were driving up to New York, and then going to be and we're going to be looking at the 10 different apartments, see which one we wanted to put a deposit on, and then drive back and then pack up and go. So we had MapQuest from point A to point B, our first stop. We did not do MapQuest from point B to point C. We did it from point A. So a nice, healthy printout of all these different locations and how to get there from the wrong point of origin. So we really only got to see one apartment out of the 10 because we couldn't find the other ones because all the directions were going. Now we tried to go, okay, let's modify this. So, but it was like, but where are we? So we know we're here, but if you don't have a map, when we didn't have a map of New York and there was no way to get one, we could have gone to a gas station, but without going in there and doing like some, cartographer nonsense, we were just like, well, we're at some point in New York unless we can find a street that we can recognize the name on the other destinations, we're screwed. So we just drove around. We just drove around. We tried to use the directions. It did not work. I think we saw one, but what we saw, we were not happy with. What was in our price range in New York City was not, it was not looking good. The few places we went in, it was like, nope. I don't want to be parked here for more than like 5 minutes just to look at the plates. I sure as heck I'm not going to park here for 6 months, a 6-month lease or whatever. So we drove back, defeated, tail between our legs. But going back out, we ended up, I don't remember if I can't imagine we meant to go to New Jersey, but I think we were just, okay, the surrounding area, if we pass something. I don't know if we went out of our way, but we ended up in Newark, New Jersey. And there was a place called the Colonnades, and it was apparently in the 70s, it was the cat's pajamas. I've said that word twice now. Nobody ever uses it, so I'm going to use it. It means it was cool. Cool. I don't know why cat's pajamas. There's got to be interesting etymology there, but I'll look it up for you guys, but maybe bring it up next time. But it means cool in case you don't know. But it was awesome, and apparently like the NBA players stayed there and everything. So, but that was in the 70s. We're at the little past the turn of the century. It's not the 70s. Some of it has been kind of renovated. A lot of it really hasn't. And these are kind of bare bones, just basic stuff. You can tell a lot about an apartment's age by the appliances. Is the stove like a beige color? If so, you got a really, really old apartment, or they haven't refurnished it in a while. It's got to be a black stove, even a white one. A white one is okay, but if it was that beige color, like again, 50s, 60s, 70s, when they thought a beige or a sickly yellow was like the cool color. It was a cat's pajamas back then. It was so you had the ugly, weird colors that came from the 50s and 60s. 70s were still ugly, but I think you were getting a little more like off-white. And I'm not a color specialist. I'm not going to be going into like eggshell and all that stuff, but you know what I'm talking about. But what you want is the black one. You want it to be black, ideally flat, like completely smooth, like so it's got the burners are built in the bottom. Like you don't want the little spirally burners on the top. I don't mind those now as much, but if you want to feel like you're in a contemporary living space, you need the glass top where these magical circles just light up red and heat comes as if through some kind of sorcery. That's what you want. Ours was that ugly beige kind, and the same thing with the cupboards. But but you just know when you know. You're like, oh gosh, and it smells. It's got that you don't want to live here smell. But you know what? We could afford it. The two of us together could afford the rent on a 1-bedroom. It wasn't a studio per se. There were too many walls, but there wasn't. The living room and bedroom were the same room. And to be fair, if it was just one person, the closet was pretty big. There's a hall closet. If it was one person, it would have been tight. I could not. What I have now, it takes up 2 rooms. I've got I mean, they're not giant rooms, but one of them is my bedroom, my living quarters, if you will, and then this is like my little studio entertainment room. So you could call it a living room. It would be hard put. Actually, no. You know what? It actually would be nice because it would be a nightmare for lighting because the entire back wall was just a giant bank of like almost floor to ceiling windows. So that was really cool. And we actually looked out. We happened to be on the side that looked out. We could see if you got really far on one side and you looked out, you could kind of sort of see a little bit of New York-ishness, the bridge going to New York or something to do with New York. You could kind of see it, but not really well. But we overlooked the park. There was some kind of like park down there. So it wasn't the worst view in the world. Wasn't the best. Newark, there really is no great side to look at. It's not like, this gorgeous skyline with like the high rise buildings and everything. And I think we were like on the 14th floor or something. So it was nice. That part of it was nice. And I think, if I would have had to somehow curtain that off. Otherwise you'd have, harsh light during the day and completely nothing at night and in the mornings. But aside from that, it would have been a nice thing. And I think it was enough space because it was enough for him to sleep on one side and feel like he had his own room. We slept on the floor, not sleeping bags. That would have been sketchy. And, felt like, okay, what are you camping out? No, we just laid out like layers and layers of blankets, lots of blankets to make a mattress because we had to pack everything into my Toyota Corolla. That was, we had to move everything we owned and everything that we were going to take with us had to fit inside a Toyota Corolla. So 2 guys with all of their earthly possessions packed in a Toyota Corolla. That's what we unpacked there. So mattress wasn't going to fit. It wasn't feasible. So we just had a bunch of blankets that we laid down on. But there was enough separation. I think we had like 10 feet maybe between his sleeping arrangement and mine, which gave us like separate rooms. And we shared the bathroom, which I don't even remember using that bathroom. I know I did because I had to, but like I don't even remember what it looked like. Now, his side was the side with the closet. So I used the hall closet as my closet, which was a lot smaller, but he was trying to be like a model. He did not wear practical. He did not wear regular, normal looking clothes. He wore clothes that looked fashionable and were horrible. So it's, 30 degrees outside. He's got the stylish scarf that is, made out of stylish material, but it doesn't keep you warm. It's meant to look like, it's like, dude, this is what you wear if you're posing for a catalog in a studio with a bunch of lights and everything. That's what you wear. That's the only time you should be wearing that. You do not wear that to walk around in wintertime. It's not going to keep you warm, but it's like, look, it looks good. So I guess that the thought kept him warm. I guess, but he was very, very much into the fashion thing and everything. So I gave him the bigger closet, and I think I had a few things in there, but we were trying to keep it as separate as we could to feel like we had our own space. The truth is we are sharing a room. It is the combination of the bedroom and the living area, and it wasn't very big, but that's what we were sharing. But we wanted to feel like we had our some autonomy, or not autonomy, but some. We had our own space, and we kind of did. I had like a little what do you call it? It was like a filing, it's just like a Tupperware, not a Tupperware, but a Rubbermaid kind of bin that you can put like hanging folders and stuff in. I brought that had all like my paperwork, passport and all that kind of stuff, and that's what I put my laptop on. So that's where I did my brilliant writing and thinking, and So I'm in New Jersey. Now like I said, he was a little more hardcore than I was when it came to pursuing the theater, and all that. He actually had a great singing voice. I don't. I can't. I will drive people crazy, not in a good way. I like madness. Madness will fall upon them if they have to listen to me sing. I cannot. I can't do it. I cannot do it. Even when I did some performances like with dinner theater where it was a very small ensemble cast, and I was brought in because one guy dropped out and they just needed pretty much a body who could memorize certain choreography. And so I was able to do that. But when we would sing, I had to lip sync, which was really bad. When you've only got like 8 people singing on stage, it's kind of noticeable. There's a lack of robustness with the singing if one person isn't doing it. But if I did sing, it threw everything off. Like it's happened twice in my life where I was part of a musical ensemble, and the at some point the song was stopped, and the guy was trying to give direct. He couldn't pinpoint who the problem was, or maybe didn't want to call it out. But it pretty much came down to, if you know you're the problem, please stop singing. He didn't say that exactly, but just said, okay, things are a little bit off. I don't know exactly what the problem is, but just try to, just everybody just kind of bring it in, and it just everyone to their ability. Maybe if you're not feeling great about it, maybe take the volume down. I don't know exactly how it went down. I just know they didn't embarrass me, which was nice, but I also know I ended up lip syncing and everybody was happy. So I don't have a great voice. He had a great voice. He had a great personality for it, to be fair. The kind of that hard-nosed, a little bit of a diva kind of thing. A healthy ego. He wasn't, a blowhard or anything, but he definitely thought enough of himself. And I think you have to have that to some degree, because you're going to deal with rejection a lot, and you got to have that fortitude. I think there may be a sweet spot, but we weren't necessarily the best of friends when it started, but we became good friends afterward and talked quite a bit. I haven't talked to him in a while, but anyway, it was 2 very different people is my point. So he took the bus, walked to the bus station, then took the bus to the train, then took the train into New York, and then took that to another station, which took him to Macy's, where he ended up working on the second floor in some kind of clothing thing. And he saw J-Lo. He came back. He went on for like 3 months, but maybe it was 3 months, because we were there for 6. It was probably 2 months. He went about, the fact that he met J-Lo. She came in. That's Jennifer Lopez, for those who know. She hasn't been, I don't think, in circulation for a while now, so you may not be familiar. But and that's how he said, J-Lo! He said J-Lo! It never got old. It really did. It was kind of funny. But anyway, that's where he worked. I did not want to, I was not going to I had a car, so I was not going to drive into New York every day and try to park somewhere. I had no desire to work in downtown New York, unless it was like with the theater. Like that, the whole point was to try to do theater work. And so I went down there a few times to, I was going to say audition, but I don't even know that I got to audition. I don't think I did really anything to do with theater. That was the whole point. I left a really good job, a job that had been made for me to pursue my dreams, because that's what the movies tell you to do. Pursue your dream, change the world. 2 completely unrealistic, unbelievable, and kind of stupid goals to have. Change the world and live your dream. Like the amount of irresponsible decisions that come from those 2 catchphrases and those 2 mentalities is ridiculous, because it doesn't say within reason or be smart about it, or there's no caveat to it. It's just follow your dreams, change the world. I mean, I'm not going to go into exactly why those are wrong right now, but needless to say, I was trying to live my dreams, but yet I executed incredibly poorly, and I was in debt, and it was the worst of times, just the straight up worst of times in that regard. I remember eating hot dogs a lot. No buns, just hot dogs, because the primary grocery store that I used was on the way to work. So I worked inland. He went out towards New York. I went in and worked in Circuit City in Bridgewater, New Jersey. Now, Circuit City is part of an illustrious club of previous employers that no longer exist. They were still in business when I was there, or when I left, but I did not like what I was seeing, because there was this really, whatever the opposite of a sweet spot is, where it's like a perfect convergence of events or situations. And it's like, it was just like a perfect moment in time. There was a time in Circuit City where it was the rotten spot, because they cut commission. So you had people, sales guys, especially in the department where I worked, which was like big TVs and home theaters and all that kind of stuff. There were guys making 75, 80 grand a year doing commission sales at Circuit City. They cut away the financial incentive of the commission. So you were just making $13 an hour or 12, somewhere between $11 and $13 an hour, which is not, FYI, does not equal out to $75,000 a year. I don't even know that it breaks the poverty line, I believe, but not by much. So you now we're telling these salespeople, do what you were doing before, but now there's no financial incentive for you to do it. They took the carrot away and they brought in the big stick. So you still had to make your numbers. They still cared if you sold or not, but you didn't get any perks. You just didn't get reamed out in front of everybody at the weekly meetings. Your department didn't get put on blast, and your job wasn't in question. If you were one of the lower performers and it was regular, you were going to be gone. So it was like I said, it was at the absolute worst. So you were being beaten by the stick to keep doing the hard sell and having to say, hey, did you, if you were going to ring somebody, you say, hey, did you work with somebody else before? And if they said yes, that was the worst. If they knew that they'd been in before, but they didn't know who you were, or they couldn't remember your name, it was, you had to do this like Sherlock Holmes detective crap. Okay, what day did you come in? I don't know. Okay, do you remember, were there any indications that it was was it a weekend maybe, or a weekday? Do you shop? Well, I think it had to be a weekend. Okay. So the weekend, it was this last month. Like, you're trying to pinpoint the day and the time, figure who was working. Did he have, and then it was a game of guess who. Did he have blonde hair? Nope. Did he have a mustache? Nope. Did he have curly hair? I don't know. It was kind of curly. Okay, well, that might, and because, it wasn't a big department, but we had several people working. There was one guy, so I was very brilliant. Retroactive, I'm just realizing this now. In this moment, I realized how brilliant I was to do this for that very reason. Because the thing was, if they said, oh, I worked with Jesse like a month ago, whatever. I came in and we talked, and he really showed me a bunch of stuff and opened my eyes and just changed my life. He's such an amazing person. Then, like it or not, they had to, even if they worked with him, usually in theory, the idea was, if I spent 3 hours working with somebody, but I wasn't able to close at that point for whatever reason, because and usually, right, if you're in sales, you go, well, that's TS. If you didn't close them, that's on you. But there were a myriad of reasons why people would go into a store like a Circuit City, which, remind you, at this same time, Best Buy was in operation, and they were just a retail store. They had knowledgeable staff, people that needed to know the things, but they didn't care if you bought or not. So it was a much more relaxed environment. So they're used to that kind of thing. Like, I'm just going into this retail store, I'm going to see what's out there, kind of like window shopping, kind of, but maybe with an intent to buy, but I'm not really sold, especially when you're in our department where everything you're going to buy, if it's worth a damn, is at least $100, pretty much. We sold really cheap versions of things, and they usually got returned if they got sold at all. And we were supposed to be hawking the protection plan, so it was kind of a conflict of interest because you want to sell them the best, you want to sell them the high-end Sony, but then once you convince them on quality, like how awesome the Sony is and how well it's built, then when you offer a protection plan, they're like, what do you mean? You just told me this thing is really well built and it's got the best parts, and that's why I'm paying, $1,000 for it, as opposed to the no-name brand that we can't even pronounce and nobody's ever heard of. And we don't know what brand it is because it was so poorly put together that the whatever logo or brand they had on the front of it has since fallen off. And so it is just the two-hole brand, the missing brand. So you just sold me on this more expensive TV, and now you're trying to tell me to spend about a third of the TV's price on a protection plan that only lasts for 3 years to fix things that might go wrong. But the whole reason I'm buying it is so that things don't go wrong. And you got me there. It's a catch-22. Like, I really, now we had some legit sales guys who could sell it, but the fact is they were selling. I was just trying to be honest, and they got me. I'm like, well, it's true, but on the other hand, if you get something like that on a really quality product, yes, like, you are going to see a picture quality. See, in the store, side by side, look, two screens next to each other, you can see a quality difference. I guarantee you're still going to see that difference when you get home. Not really, but it will be there. You'll know in your mind that you've got a better looking TV, unless you're signal is not as good because we were still, primarily people watching cable TV. As long as your signal's good, you've got a better looking screen than people with a cheaper TV. And hopefully that knowledge will make you feel better about spending 2 to 3 times as much on that TV. But so you know that, but also it's completely free money for us because you're probably never going to use it. And even if you do, there's a lot of caveats and ways we can work around it. But bottom line, it is 100% pure profit for us. So we made $20 on that TV. That $1,000 TV, we might make $25, $50 on it. We don't got a lot of margin in there. So you're not really helping us by buying this television. But you are helping us by spending $300 on something that essentially is betting against yourself and your device and betting that it's not going to work. It's going to break down at some point. So yeah, it was a mess. It was a mess for multiple reasons. But my brilliance, I forgot about my brilliance. The brilliant part of it. Anyway, so there were reasons, backtracking. There were reasons why people would not necessarily be able to be closed because they didn't have, a lot of times they didn't have the decision maker. They had half of the decision maker. Ideally, you got 2 people coming together, you got the husband and wife, if you got that dynamic going on, unless somebody really doesn't care and they made it clear they don't care, they kind of both need to be there. So if just the guy or just the gal were in, they're like, I need to come back with my husband, I need to come back with my wife or whatever. I mean, the be-backs, it is what it is. But there were legitimate reasons for not closing a deal at a place that was ostensibly a retail. As far as they were concerned, it was retail. For us, it was life and death, cutthroat, commission. But for them, it was just, it was like going to Best Buy. They didn't know the horrible inner workings, which is also why they didn't pay attention to the names. Now, we would tell them, but without trying to put too much on there. Like, we didn't have cards, of course, because, yeah, well, maybe somebody did, because I think some of them did from the old school folks that were there when it was commission sales. I think they actually did have cards. I didn't have cards. I wasn't going to get cards for something like that. But even if you did, like, to impress upon them, it is very important when you return with your spouse or when you return with your money or your pocketbook, as we might say, or your checkbook, because we still took checks back then. A lot of them, actually. When you return with the funds, ask for me. Ask for me. I might not be working. And if that's the case, I would like you to leave and then come back like on a day, like I'm working these days. Please plan your shopping accordingly. We couldn't go into all, we couldn't do all that. All we could say is, almost like a comedian. My name's been Jesse, and I've been Jesse, and I've been the one helping you today. Please remember me or ask for me. That was what it was. Ask for me when you come back. That was the only real directive we could give, because everything else, it put too much burden on them as a customer, and they might sour at the experience and everything. All right, so that was my notification that we are approaching the end. I wanted to do that, so I won't do this in the future, but that was my let's wrap it up so that I don't kind of leave it just kind of hanging here. So the goal is to be done as close to the 60-minute mark as possible. So, but now I got myself all flabbergasted. See, now I'm scrambling for the papers. What was my train of thought? Oh, they didn't know. So, but here was my brilliance. I'm going to end on my brilliant plan that I didn't realize. I just did this. The crazy thing was, the sad or ridiculous thing was, I didn't do this specifically to solve this problem, because what would happen is everybody in our department, Rich was the only guy who had thinning blonde hair. Everybody else had dark hair, and everybody else, we were roughly the same height. I was a little bit taller than most, but we had one guy, Dave, who you would remember him. He was just think Megadeth. If you were to picture a fan of Megadeth, long hair pulled back, goatee, hardcore, whatever. He had a very distinct look. But aside from him and Rich, everybody in the department, dark hair, roughly the same height, very, very nondescript. So what I did, again, just on a whim, but turned out to be brilliant, was I grew a Captain Morgan mustache. I grew the top to the part where I could do the whole twisty thing, and I could actually get it to curl up. Eventually, I did cut it. I woke up enough times where I was sleeping on my side, and my Captain Morgan was infiltrating my nose. It was pillaging my nose. And it kept being an irritation. So eventually I got rid of it. But for the longest time I had Captain. So people would come in and they would say, hey, do you remember who you worked with? Because the thing was, you had to ask the question. You were legally obligated to ask the question when somebody came in. Hey, how are you? Blah, blah, blah. What have you been here before? Oh, yeah, I came in here last week. Oh, really? Do you remember who your salesperson was? That was, if somebody was here before, you had to ask who their salesperson was. And that's where the problem usually was, because all you could say was, if they didn't remember the name, they'd just be like, I don't know, really. He was a really nice guy, dark hair. It's like, okay, that's not helping. And so if you could not, without going into the guess who line of questioning, I mean, there were people that did that. I didn't. But if you try to go through as thoroughly as you could, if you couldn't figure out who it was, and some people, like I said, didn't really give it too much of a try, then the sale was yours. If you made that sale that day, you got the sale, even if somebody else had worked with them. And sometimes it was fine because they only worked with whoever it was for like 5 minutes. They came in, they talked to the sales guy. He showed him a few, here's our selection. And they're like, okay, I'll browse. And that was it. That was the only interaction. Because when people say that, we give them their space, and we just kind of circle around them out of their peripheral vision like vultures, waiting for them to give any kind of nonverbal indication that they might somehow vaguely be interested in a particular one. And then we pounce and tell them, all about it and start easing them over to the checkout counter. But we gave people their space when they asked for it. So they might have had very, very limited interaction with that person, or you might have worked with them for like the entire day. And unfortunately for some people, and I say unfortunately as a truth, like it's unfortunate that this is true, not unfortunate that these people were mean or stupid or whatever. But sometimes people just don't, they're not really tracking with that. They're there to buy something. You're there to facilitate that. This is not like and you might make them laugh. You might share a good time. You might get invited to their wedding, but they're not going to remember your name or remember much about you. So you never really knew. So in fairness, it could be either way. Either maybe you didn't help them that much and it really isn't, you shouldn't get the sale because the new salesman actually did more work, or it could be the other way around. But that's why it was just across the board. It's going to average out. Ask them if they, who their salesperson was. If they can't identify that person, then it's your sale, regardless of how much they may or may not have done with them. So by growing the Captain Morgan, I made it a guarantee that anybody who worked with me at all, at any point, when they came in and said, hey, do you remember who you were working with? They didn't remember my name. They just said Captain Morgan. Because that was, it wasn't even like they didn't even have to say the guy who looks like Captain Morgan. They would just say Captain Morgan. So that was my inadvertent but brilliant way of getting around being forgotten, easily forgotten. So I got sales. There were people that were, and we all did it for each other. It was a very, we were all suffering together, being beaten with a stick with no carrot. They took something that was meant to be a carrot and they turned it into a stick. And that was Circuit City. So now I have set the stage. I'm in Newark, New Jersey, working in Bridgewater, New Jersey. And within 3 months or 4 months, I will be doing a stand-up show at a comedy club in Bridgewater, New Jersey. Stay tuned for the next episode where hopefully we will get to that point. Take care.